Hi, I'm Salvatore Babones, and today's lecture is a run-through of the major report, the Social Problem Report for Sociology 2000 Global Social Problems. The major written assessment for Sociology 2000 is a comparative social problems report of absolutely no more than 1,500 words, broken into four parts, which I'll describe in the assignment sheet itself. The report should present a well-researched analysis of a global social problem of your choice. And by well-researched, I mean that you should be reading a lot more materials than you actually cite in the report itself. For examples of global social problems you might want to analyze, have a look at the UN Global Issues website. This is the website we used for the tutorials the final week of April. You don't have to focus on the problem you used for that tutorial. You're welcome to use that or choose any other problem. And for that matter, if more than one of you in the same tutorial want to study the same problem, that's no problem, as long as you write completely separate reports. Finally, you should focus on the social problems aspect of your problem, not the scientific or economic aspects. This is, after all, a course in social problems, not a course in technical solutions. Let me switch over to the assignment sheet. The report will be due Monday, May 15th, and it goes in the major report folder where you will find an assignment Dropbox. That should be open sometime this week, but I don't expect anyone will be using the Dropbox until May 15th. You're welcome to submit your paper early, and if you do submit early, you can always resubmit and replace the paper up until the assignment due date of May 15th. At 4 p.m. May 15th, whatever you have in the Dropbox is there to stay. Of course, you can always turn your paper in after May 15th, and those of you who have special consideration may want to turn your paper in after May 15th, but any papers turned in after May 15th will be frozen. That's the final version of the paper. Please turn in only your 1,500-word report. No supporting materials, no readings you did, no disability certificates, no special consideration requests. All that is handled separately. All I need in the Dropbox is the report itself, in Microsoft Word format, the report as you write it. In fact, I suggest that you take this document, the assignment sheet itself, and download it from the class website and type your own materials into it. Just delete what's there, and you can write your paper here. And if you were to take that approach, you would find that you already have some examples of hyperlinks, and you already have everything formatted in the way that I'd like you to format your paper for turning it in. Okay, to the substance. This is an extended policy report of 1,500 words. No more than 1,500 words. As I've said earlier, you could go to the UN Global Problems website just to have a look at the kinds of issues you might study. Now, obviously not all of these are social, but all of these have social aspects to them. And you don't have to take on the entire problem. For instance, status of women is a huge problem, but you could focus on a specific aspect of it. So, for example, if you were studying the global social problem of status of women, you could focus on the specific global social problem of rape used as a weapon of war, which is something very specific that you can use to narrow your paper. You don't have to use one of these topics. You can choose any topic you want. If you're uncertain about your topic, send me an email. I am thrilled to hear from students about their ideas for papers and to go back and forth with students over what would make a good paper. So, if you'd like to talk about it, if you're unsure, or, if you just want some ideas, email me and I'm happy to help you settle on a specific topic for your report. Remember, this is a sociology class, not a class in economics or technology, so what we want is a report that focuses on the social aspects of the problem. Also note, there is a 1,500 word page limit. 1,500 word limit for this paper. Now, I go through this with students every semester. 1,500 words mean 1,500 words. It doesn't mean there's a 10% grace level. There doesn't mean that there's a point off for every word over. It means exactly what it says. The paper you turn in, if you go to Microsoft Word and you get a word count for your paper, you'll notice word counts right down here. It tells me number of words. That number for this assignment sheet is 1,449. Great. If that number says 1,501, cut a word. It's just that simple. 1,500 words, including the title, including your name, including everything. 1,500 word limit for the paper. As I say, please do not turn in more than 1,500 words. I hope that's clear enough. Okay. Start by researching your chosen global social problem. If there's a UN focus site on it, obviously read through the UN material. Check Google News for recent information about the problem. Become a bit of an expert on it. And then once you're an expert, choose a country that represents an interesting aspect of the problem. So, for example, if you were studying something like the problem of rape as a weapon of war, you might want to choose Liberia in West Africa, where there have been problems with that and where, in fact, a general has been on trial at the International Criminal Court over the use of rape as a war crime. Okay. This focus country will become the focus of the first half of your report. Then, in addition, identify several other countries that are also relevant examples. So if you were studying the war crime of rape in Liberia, you might also choose countries like Burkina Faso and Sierra Leone, neighboring countries that have also had civil wars. And you can then compare the scale of the problem and the solutions to the problem that are used in your chosen country versus in the comparative cases. And these comparative cases will form the basis of the second half of your report. When you write up your analysis, when you write up your report, give it a meaningful title. So the title shouldn't be paper assignment. The title should be something like, rape as a weapon of war in West Africa. Have an author, that is you. And then you should structure a paper with first a few short introductory paragraphs, then a section on your focus country, then a section putting things in comparative perspective, and finally a concluding section. So when your paper is finished, you will have, if I scroll down here, an opening section with just under your name, you start the paper, a first section with a heading, a second section with a heading, and a third section that is a conclusion. And that's a pretty typical format. The paper would be something like rape as a weapon of war in West Africa, describing the problem of rape as a weapon of war. First section, focus on Liberia. Second section, comparison of Liberia with the rest of the region. And third section, conclusion about how to solve the problem or your thoughts about the problem. Okay. Paper no more than 1,500 words in length. So let me give you an example. Before I go over the marking rubric, let me give you an example of the sort of thing we're talking about. And here I'm going to go to my own website. I do tons of this sort of popular writing. What I'd really like to do with this assignment is get out of the mold of writing research papers. You write dozens of research papers throughout your academic career, and then no one ever in all of your life is ever going to ask you to write a research paper again. But having the skill of writing a social problems report, well, it is the sort of thing that if you stay in the world of social services, social problems, international development, you may find yourself writing things just like this. In fact, simply as a citizen, you could write things just like this. Now, my recent writing has mostly focused on international relations, not on social problems. If you go deep into my website back to 2015, you'll find literally dozens of short reports about social problems. But I do have a recent one here on pollution in China. And this was written for Al Jazeera. Red alert for China's pollution protesters by Salvatore Babones. And for your report, we don't need fancy graphics, no pictures, nothing like that. But if you look at the substance of my report, it starts with an opening. It's winter in Beijing, and that means two things: cold and smog. And it sets up the problem of smog in Beijing and how bad it is. Okay. Then there's a section, world's worst. This section then focuses on the levels of smog in Beijing compared to the rest of the world. And then there's a section about China's understanding of its problem of pollution. That concludes the paper. Now, this paper on Al Jazeera is actually only 800 words. Your papers will be 1,500 words. So you'll have a slightly more complicated arrangement where you'll have an opening, then you'll have a focus on Beijing, or on the country itself that you're focused on, then you'll have a comparative section, and then a conclusion. So essentially, if you wanted to think of what your paper might look like, it would look an awful lot like my Red Alert for China's pollution protesters if my paper had an extra 700 words about pollution in China. It does have the comparison of pollution in India and other parts of the world, but it doesn't have a full 700-word section about pollution in China itself. You can find other examples of social problems writing on my website. Again, my articles tend to be shorter because most of what I've written recently has been for policy outlets. But you can get some idea of what we're looking for. Here's one at the National Interest about Trump's refugee deal. Again, you are not expected to provide photos. That's something that websites tend to use to attract people. You also, of course, should not provide advertising. Okay. If you look at my reports, whether it's the one for Al Jazeera or this one for the National Interest, you'll see lots of links, hot links to sources. So if I claim that most of the child refugees in the United States, most of them have families in the United States, I have a hot link to back that up. Most of them have hot linked families in the United States. If I were to click on that, hopefully that will link through to my source, which was, I believe, one of my own prior articles. So here you'll get an example of one of my own social policy articles about child refugees. And actually that's me, again, Care for Child Refugees. And this is a factual article about child refugees in the United States. If I choose another link, the Barack Obama deal with Australia was signed immediately after the November 8 elections. Again, you'll see a link, and if we wait for the source, we have a source to the ABC, a very credible news outlet. Okay. You're also welcome to use actual data in your reports. Actually, I would encourage you to use data in your reports. And as you know, we used the World Bank World Development Indicators, the CIA World Factbook, and the China National Bureau of Statistics website. You're welcome to use any of those data sources in your report, and if you do, just provide a link to the data source. Okay, let me go back to the assignment sheet. I grade all of my written assignments using what I call a progressive marking rubric. Progressive meaning it starts at the bottom. If your paper meets the criteria for a pass, then it moves up to the next level of a high pass. If it meets the criteria for a high pass, then it moves up to the next level of a credit. So you don't specifically get points off for any one thing. Instead, I expect people who can write people who can do a fantastic, sophisticated paper, should also be able to follow basic instructions. So to get a pass, if you want to get a grade of 55 to 60, just do the basic technical aspects of this paper. Have a title and your name as author. Single space your paper, just like this assignment sheet is single spaced, with double spaces between paragraphs, just like this assignment sheet. Use Times New Roman 12-point font, etc., etc. And importantly, follow the formatting for the paper. Now, you'll notice that to get even a 55 on this paper, your paper has to be organized into specific 4 sections. an opening section with no heading, and then 3 substantive sections. A first section focusing on your country, a second section with focusing on comparison cases, and a third section that suggests some solutions. That format, opening section and then 3 sections with headings, is absolutely necessary. If you don't have that, the highest grade you can get, according to this marking rubric, is a 50. That is, if you've done your best to write a paper, but you haven't written the paper that I've assigned, the best I'll give is a 50. Okay. Everybody should be able to follow the very basic set of instructions to have the paper formatted in the way that it has been assigned, and also have no more than 1,500 words. If you feel it's very important that you have to have 1,600 words, I'm happy to give you a 50 on the paper as a good effort. Now, the reason for being so strict about the formatting and the number of words is that I have to grade around 80 papers. And when I'm grading these papers, I have to have some sense of how good one paper is relative to another. I have to have some sense of how good the paper is relative to the expectations of the assignment. And to do that, I have to compare apples and apples, not apples and oranges. Your paper has to fit the assignment in order to be graded as a paper for this assignment. If you write a beautiful paper about something else, I guarantee you the best you're going to get is a 50. All right, moving on to the credit range. In the credit range, what I'm looking for are some harder to verify points. That you really have chosen a meaningful global social problem. If you study rape as a weapon of war as a social problem, well, that's a real social problem. If you study the characteristics of the AK-47 assault rifle, well, that's interesting, but that's not a social problem. And so, analyzing an actual meaningful social problem is necessary to get into the credit range. Of course, you should treat it as a social problem, not a technical problem. You should have meaningful and intellectually original arguments. You should be balanced. I'm not looking for something biased. Some of you may think you have learned that if you just write something as Marxian and left-wing as possible, your professors will love it. Well, I'll tell you, I'm a Marxian scholar who's generally considered to be on the left wing of the intellectual spectrum, but I don't give good grades to papers just because they sound very radical. What I'm looking for in a paper like this, and if you look at my own policy writing, you'll see mine's the same. I'm looking for something that takes a balanced tone, that's grounded, that could be read by anybody. A paper that a paper that your mother or your uncle could read, who has no idea about sociology or about Marxism, and who could still read the paper and get something from it. I'm not looking for something biased or extremely political. Okay. I'm looking for a paper that uses sources and information to add value. So, not a paper that summarizes what you've read in sources, but something that learns from the sources and writes something new. Of course, I'm looking for high-quality sources. If you absolutely have to cite Wikipedia for something, there are no points off for that. But honestly, there are no points gained for that either. What I'm looking for are high-quality sources. Now, we've done a few exercises around this. You all know what high-quality sources are. Sources like the ABC, like Reuters, like the BBC, like the New York Times. These are Washington Post. These are sources that the world trusts. Even other media sites. I write regularly for Al Jazeera. Some people consider Al Jazeera not to be a respectable source. I would say on a scale from 1 to 10, the Washington Post is a 9 and Al Jazeera is a 7. But they're both perfectly solid sources. Okay. Your solutions to the problem in the conclusion should be realistic. Solutions that say that if only we all learn to live, in peace with each other, we could solve this problem. That's not a realistic solution. Let me have some specific ideas about how the world is going to solve the social problems that you're writing about. And of course, for credit, I'd like something written in basically appropriate English. Now, I know for many of you, English is not your first language. I don't take points off for misspellings or tiny grammar errors, but I would like you to put the work in to make sure that I can read your paper and that it's appropriately written in academic English. For the distinction range, the criteria get much vaguer, and especially for high distinction, vaguer still. Here I'm just looking for a very solid paper. To get distinction, make sure you hit all of the lower points. I mean, go through and you can literally have a friend, read your paper and go through each box. Check, 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 check. Check to make sure your paper has page numbers, because when I give you feedback, I'll give you feedback according to page numbers. Go check, 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 check all through the boxes. Then when you get to the distinction level, if you've checked all the previous boxes, I'm looking for a paper that shows a high level of understanding. I'm looking for a paper that presents meaningful insights. I'm looking for a paper that is really written in a sophisticated way. It's difficult to get distinction, and it's difficult for me to decide on distinction. But everybody should be able to get a credit just by checking all the boxes up to that point. High distinction will be given on a case-by-case basis for papers of truly exceptional merit. All right. Key takeaways. First, the main substantive objective of this assignment is for you to gain a deeper understanding of an important global social problem through analyzing the problem in specific, actually existing contexts. I want you to learn from this assignment. I'm an educator, I'm not an examiner. What I'm really looking for in this assignment is that you've done a ton of reading, that you really understand the problem you're writing about, that you understand it not just in the generic global sense, but you have some specific examples. You know about it in particular places, in particular contexts in the world. Okay. A major additional objective for this assignment is to branch out, to experiment with writing an article of a type that frankly is emerging as the new global standard for policy debate. If you go online, you will see millions of articles of the kind that you are being asked to write for this assignment. It's becoming simply the standard way we communicate in the global intellectual space. 40 years ago, even 20 years ago, maybe research papers were the main way people discuss the world with each other. Certainly not today. Today, this kind of online writing that's brief, that has hyperlinks to references, that's topical, this is what people are doing, and it's something I'd like you to at least experiment with once during your university career. And finally, I can't stress it enough, your report should be no more than 1,500 words, all inclusive. That includes everything. And your referencing should use hyperlinks for references to outside sources. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good luck on the paper. Don't hesitate to email me. I really am very happy to talk about topics. I can't review drafts of paper for you, but I can give you feedback if you have specific questions, if you want guidance. I always respond to email very quickly. And if you start the paper soon, then we can go through half a dozen emails together as you work on your paper. Of course, if you start your paper on May 15th, then there's not much I can do for you. But get started, enjoy your research, enjoy the paper, and good luck with it.